So in the previous video we explored how to recreate the contact lens visual effect used on Westworld Season 3. But there was another visual effect that really caught my attention, Serac's Hologram Ex Machina visual effect. And let me tell you, I'm super glad I dove at first into recreating this effect. Since last year I've been learning Blender and this was the perfect effect for me to try the basics. On screen this effect looks really complicated and messy, but once I slowed things down, it exposed how visual effects artists approached the creation of this effect. So fire up Blender, pop After Effects in the oven, and let's cook some delicious visual effects. In its simple form, this is basically a transition effect between the actor's shot and a clean plate. And that's all you need to capture really. Make sure to get a clean shot of the background, add a pinch of quality acting, and you are good to go. But before we jump into the fancy stuff and get all 3D, let's first set up the foundations of this effect in After Effects. The first layer is a clean plate with no subjects. Then a plate of the foreground elements, in the case of the show, Hill's arm and gun. I wanted to avoid any rotoscoping, so I made sure the foreground elements didn't overlay with the subject, but for added realism and if you really like rotoscoping, have fun. The meat of the effect is how to transition between the clean plate and the subject. You could just do one of these, but that's really not godlike. We need to find a way to dynamically mask away parts of the body, including occluded portions. To create this mask, I will be using Blender and the 3D model to replicate my body in 3D space. For this I will also be using Make Human, a free software that lets me generate a generic human body. Here you can go super deep and really model yourself and spend a lot of time, but really don't do that. We will be shaping things into place later using Blender. This 3D model will now act as reference geometry to recreate masks and visual effects that fit into our scene. As long as the 3D model aligns roughly with our main features, all effects should fit well in compositing. Use proportional editing to move the mesh around and line up things, and have fun recreating your nightmares. Once you have the model roughly aligned, it's time to work on the shader. The original reference effect shows the hologram dissolving in 3D space. If you notice, the back of his head is already dissolving, therefore the part facing the camera becomes less bright. I can see this happening in real life, I guess, if this technology was possible. If they are projecting some kind of pixels, if there's less pixels, it should be less bright. While I was looking at the effect, I also realized that they used some kind of 3D model underneath to highlight the contours of the suit and shirt and possibly his face. It's a nice detail that I will not include in my version. I will stick to the core features. The mask that we'll be using to transition between the subject and clean plates, plus help composite the overlays, which will be the edge emissions and the scanning lines. The mask shader is basically a collection of noise textures mapped to the object's coordinates. This noise will then drive the strength of an emission shader, which is mixed with a transparent shader. This mix happens with a 0.5 factor, which means that we will be able to see the effect even though some material facing the camera is still not dissolved, like we see on the show. Using a color ramp and some keyframes, we are ready to animate the mask progression. While watching this mask transition on the show, I noticed something interesting. All iterations of this effect have the eye as the last part to dissolve. I believe this serves both a storytelling and cinematic purpose. It shows again that Serac is always watching, personifying the all-seeing eye, if you will. It also helps the audience to anchor the effect. Because we all tend to focus our attention on eyes, the effect feels more natural. This principle is also used, for example, for hyperlapses, an effect that I'm really eager to cover on this channel. So drop a like if you want to see that too. To make it more convenient, I used a null object to drive the noise texture coordinates, and I tweaked the effect until the last dissolving portion is one of the eyes. And with that, we have the mask ready. I kept working on this shader to get two overlays out of the same masks. I made it so that you can get this shader alongside the After Effects project files and assets used on this video. Check out the first link in the description for more details, and thanks for supporting. And with that, we can render out the 3 layers, and it's time to go back to After Effects. We now have a better way to transition between plates using the luminance information of the rendered mask. But like you see, we still need to fix some details. Apply a levels effect to the mask to fix the black and white levels, and the liquefy effect to perfectly align the mask to the subject. And the same applies to the two other overlay effects. Copy exactly the same mask and apply an inverted luma matte to the overlay to occlude some areas. The rest is your standard compositing effects like exposure, saturation, and blur effects. I covered this in much detail on my previous videos, so check it out if you need more compositing tips. Let me be honest, when I saw this effect for the first time, I was mesmerized by its complexity, but once I started thinking outside of the 2D After Effects box, the process turned pretty straightforward. But that was for me, so let me know if you have any questions and check out the Blender shader in the link below. I'm still finding my footing here on YouTube again, so let me know if you like these meshes between tutorials and video essays. Again, my name is Hugo Lança, this is my channel, and I'll see you on the next one.